Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am your host, Dr. Steve, and this is Know Your Rights. Um, Again, you folks are. I hope you stayed with me because this next part is going to be even more shocking than what you just heard in the second segment. I'm not going to waste any more time here, but for those of you that are just tuning in, this is Representative Matt Shea from Washington in the 4th District, and he is reading an email in regards to the Bundy Ranch case and the travesty that happened there with what lead investigator Larry Wooten from the federal government has leaked and came out to explain to the Department of Justice what actually transpired there and the laws that were broken and the cover-up and the corruption. I'm going to go back to Representative Shea and just keep listening. It gets worse as we go.
We'll move next to some more comments that he had and then get into something that is probably the most shocking part of this entire correspondence. Quote, this carnival, inappropriate and childish behavior didn't stop with the directed bias and degradation of subjects of investigation. BLM law enforcement supervisors also openly talked about and gossiped about private employee personnel matters such as medical conditions, work performance, marriage issues, religion, punishments, internal investigations, and derogatory opinions of high-level BLM supervisors. He also says, quote, there was a religious test of sorts, and he was personally asked, quote, you're not a Mormon, are you? And he was told, quote, I bet you think I'm going to hell, end quote. He continues, quote, that the investigation also indicated that on multiple occasions, former BLM Special Agent in Charge, Love, specifically and purposely ignored U.S. Attorney's Office and BLM's civilian management direction and intent, as well as Nevada state official recommendations in order to command the most intrusive, oppressive, large-scale, and militaristic trespass cattle impound possible, end quote. I want to comment on that for a second. If government exists to protect the rights of life, liberty, and property, and you have now a special agent in charge questioning the handling of this situation, that it was intentionally made intrusive, oppressive, large-scale, and militaristic, we have a problem in America today. And those people that did this need to be held accountable for it. And I have, again, every confidence the Trump administration will do so. It's also interesting to note that Special Agent Wooten said that he had contacted Attorney Stephen Myrie and Assistant United States Attorney Nadia Ahmed, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Joe Willis by telephone on these issues. And as you read through the document, which we will post online here as soon as this segment is done, very specifically, he seems to imply that nothing was ever done by any of those folks. And that at the very least needs to be investigated further if that is indeed the correct implication. But the most shocking part of this entire thing, I believe, is that the BLM law enforcement arm and one of his supervisors, quote, emailed out photographs of an arrest tracking wall in which Eric Parker and Cliven Bundy had X's through their face and body, and then he puts in quotation or in parentheses indicating prejudice and bias in parentheses. Well, I think that's a little bit more than prejudice and bias in my opinion, because later in this document he says, quote, time after time I was told a former BLM special agent in charge loves misconduct. I was told by BLM law enforcement supervisors that he had a kill book. Every American needs to understand what I just said. That you have a special agent in charge that had a kill book. Well, was that turned over to the defense? How is that due process? I mean, there's a lot of questions this statement by Special Agent Wooten raises, but he continues, quote, as a trophy, and in essence bragged about getting 3 individuals in Utah to commit suicide, which is why I gave the statement I did at the beginning of this segment, because that's probably one of the most startling statements I have ever read in any investigation I've ever been a part of in the last 15 years. That is beyond startling. But he goes on and he cites the specific operations that were bragged about. Apparently Operation Cerberus, which I don't even know what that is, but we'll find out, and I know you reported on it, I think. Also, the Failure Rock and Burning Man special event where, quote, he was unlawfully removing evidence, bragging about the number of OIG and internal investigations on him, and indicating that he was untouchable, end quote. Those are some of the most shocking statements, again, that I have heard in a long time. And people may try to discredit Special Agent Wooten later, but internal to this document, he also says that he was removed from the case on February 18, 2017 by his supervisor, despite his recently documented and awarded hard work and excellence and often praised performance within Bureau of Land Management. He says, quote, "I am convinced that I was removed to prevent the ethical and proper further disclosure of the severe misconduct, failure to correct and report, and cover-ups by the BLM OLES supervision. Time after time." This is where he starts in about the kill book. But he goes on and says, "I became convinced that my supervisor failed to properly disclose substantive and exculpatory case and witness bias-related issues to the United States Attorney General's office, which they have a duty to disclose exculpatory evidence. And since we don't know what's happening in these sealed hearings, I suspect this is what is giving rise to all the rumors that this case is going to be dismissed. If this type of exculpatory evidence was withheld, I mean, my goodness. But it gets even more interesting when it talks about in this document that Dave Bundy's iPad likely contained remarks from BLM law enforcement officers that is potentially evidence of civil rights violations and use of excessive force. Mr. Myrie, this is again talking about the attorney, the prosecutor, and my supervisor not only apparently failed to initiate the proper follow-on actions, Mr. Myrie apparently failed to notify defense counsel and also decided not to return the iPad back to Dave Bundy, even though the iPad wasn't going to be searched pursuant to a search warrant or used as evidence in trial.
Is this the same Stephen Myrie that is currently the acting U.S. Attorney for the state and District of Nevada?
Yes, I believe so. It is.
Okay, I'm going to stop there because we're coming up on another break. If you aren't shocked already, it gets worse. I have never. If you take the words of this investigator, which I don't see any reason for him to have to lie. He obviously has the evidence to back it up. As Representative Shea said, they're probably going to try to discredit him later, and they will, because this is one of the biggest scandals where people died, and at the hands of the federal government when it did not need to happen. I'm outraged. So we're going to go to the next break. Yes, guys, I got rid of the bumper music and all that other stuff because I don't want to waste any time. I want to make sure that all this information gets out there because the American people need to hear this. We have rogue agents within our government that are going unchecked. No checks and balances, no accountability, just doing whatever they want because in Representative Shea's own words from Larry Wooten, the guy said he was untouchable. I'm outraged. We'll be back in a few moments. I am Dr. Steve. This is Know Your Rights. Stay tuned. You're going to want to hear the rest of this. Believe me, it gets worse. Be back in a moment.